Good afternoon. My name is Louis Goodman. I'm the host of the Love Thy Lawyer podcast, and we are doing this podcast in conjunction with the Alameda County Bar Association as part of the ongoing Barristers Club Get to Meet the Attorneys and Judges program. Today, we are very happy to have one of our attorneys in Alameda County. She is admitted in both California and Florida. She started her career in the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. She prosecuted hundreds of misdemeanor and felony offenses. Then she moved into the world of civil litigation, where she tried cases as a creditor's rights attorney. More recently, she formed and now heads her own firm, helping clients navigate the difficulties of the criminal justice system. She passionately and tenaciously fights for fairness. Joanna Nieves, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it really is a privilege to have you. You are certainly, in my view, one of the real up-and-coming stars of the private practice in Alameda County. Where is your office located right now?
It's at 160 Franklin Street, Suite 210, which is in Jack London Square, right across from where Kincaid's used to be. So we have a really good view of the marina.
Now, if someone wants to find you online, how would they go about doing that?
You can find us online at www.nieveslawfirm.com.
And we'll make sure we get that in the show notes as well. How long have you been practicing law?
About a decade. So what year is that? 2011, June 2011.
Where are you from originally?
Originally from Miami, from Florida. I grew up there. I did my undergrad there. I went to law school in Florida, and then now I'm a transplant.
Where did you go to high school, in Miami?
Yeah, I went to a school. It's called School for Advanced Studies. They basically take all of the top performers, invite them to a school where you do dual enrollment. So I did high school in the afternoon, college in the day, and graduated with pretty much an associate's degree by the time I went to college.
So you've been a top performer for a long time.
I'm competitive.
What sort of activities did you enjoy doing in high school?
Wow. I did karate and I played piano. I didn't do a lot. My school didn't have sports or any type of after school programs because our activities were college. And then my stuff for fun was just kind of the karate and piano activities my parents had me in.
After you graduated from high school, where did you go to college?
Florida State.
And where's that located?
In Tallahassee, Florida.
What was that experience like for you?
It was one of the best times of my life. It was so good. I went back again. I did 2 undergraduate degrees. I did a dual degree program while I was there, one in multinational business, and my second degree was in finance. And then after I graduated, I took a year off and I went back for law school.
What sort of activities were you involved in when you were an undergrad?
Oh, a lot. I was president of the Multicultural Greek Council. I was parliamentarian and social chair for my sorority, Theta Nu Xi Multicultural Sorority Incorporated. I was involved in the Hispanic Student Union. I was working. I worked 3 jobs at all times. I was constantly doing something. And then I went to class.
And you went to class too.
Yeah, somehow that happened.
So you graduated and then you took a year off? What did you do during that year?
I was really young when I graduated. So I got my first degree at 19. I got my second degree at 20. I was just really unsure of what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't know I was going to go to law school. So I worked. I had a job at a bank, and I was working there. And I had two sorority sisters who were studying for the LSAT. And I was like, you know what? I'll just take this with you guys. And I registered. And the day before the LSAT, I like cracked the book open and was like, all right, let me see what this test is all about. And then I went and took it, and it turned out of the three of us, I was the one who ended up going to law school and becoming a lawyer.
So when was the first time that you really started thinking about going to law school or becoming a lawyer?
It was it was after that. I thought I was going to go to the military. I come from a military family. It was just kind of like a way of life that I really respected and wanted to take part in. I was actually went to MEPS. I was doing my security clearance. I was in a PT program. I was ready to go to officer school and submitted my application and everything. We were talking about a law program at that point in time, but they really were pushing me towards a finance position. And I didn't want to go there to do that now that I had my law school acceptance. And so at that point in time, I was like, well, let me just go straight to law school. And then while I was in law school, that's kind of where I developed the passion for actually becoming a lawyer. At first, it was just this thing to do. And then it really became the thing for me to do.
And you went back to Florida State for law school.
I did. And the funny story with that is I actually applied to University of Florida, which at the time was ranked just a little bit higher than Florida State. And I applied. I tell people I applied just to turn them down because I got accepted, but we're such fierce rivals, and I'm a double no. So I was like, yeah, I got into UF, and I said no.
How did it differ being in law school at Florida State versus being an undergraduate at Florida State?
I had to, it became far more regimented. I had to actually, it sounds weird, like almost actually apply yourself. It's not that, school and testing, things like that always came very easy for me. And so undergrad, I was just, active, hanging out, I mean, partying, going to class when I wanted to. And then for law school, it was a very different experience. It was like, I needed to read, I needed to study, I needed to retain this information because it was all based on, your scores and your passing grades were all based on one exam at the end of the semester. It wasn't these like midterms or you write a paper and you get a grade. It was just like, no, retain this knowledge, regurgitate it, and pass. So it was different.
Do you think that having that year of work experience between the time you graduated from undergrad and the time you went to law school helped you be more focused in law school, really knowing what you wanted to do?
I think work experience in general helped me with law school. And I worked through law school as well. I worked about 60 hours a week in law school, which I had to get permission to do. I think that helped me stay disciplined more so than I was when I was in undergrad. And it was just because the discipline wasn't necessary in undergrad. It was actually just that easy. But law school, I needed to focus more. And that work experience, just knowing when it's time to turn it on and be professional and be accountable in situations, because I was always a very hard worker and diligent about that. I was able to translate that to my studies.
What sort of work did you do while you were in law school?
So I did a number of internships. So I worked at the Second Judicial Circuit. I did election law. I did like a family law kind of stint, juvenile dependency and delinquency. And then I was also working at a bank, and I was working at Foot Locker for a while, just the different stores, Champs, Ladies Foot Locker, and I was bartending. So I bartended in the evenings. Not all of those at the same time, but a combination of those throughout. But yeah, I definitely bartended all 3 years of law school and worked at the mall all 3 years.
Well, but the bartending experience gave you some helpful hints for how to deal with clients?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you get to meet so many different people and have interesting conversations. I started my counseling back when I was a bartender, and then it just translates over to what we do now. And I think even now, as like somebody who makes hiring decisions on a regular basis, those are the type of questions I like, or the answers I like to hear people give, because they don't put it on their resume, right? Nobody lists on there that they were a bartender, or they only give you the legal stuff, their internships at the PD's office. But I'm really interested in people who have had that type of like experience where you were going to school and you were working late nights and still getting up and doing what you needed to do. So those are the things that I think speak to a person's ability to manage clients well.
Once you got out of law school, what was your first legal job?
My first legal job was at SAC DA. My second year of law school, I interviewed via video conference for an internship at the Sacramento County DA's office, and I got that as a summer internship my 2L year. At the end of that internship, I was offered a full-time position upon the completion of law school. So I went back to Florida, finished my third year. My offer was actually rescinded during my 3L year because of budget cuts. And so it was around, because I graduated 09, and I moved to California anyway. I was like, well, I want to take the California bar, took the bar. And while I was studying for the bar, the ADA called and was like, are you in California? Are you taking the bar? We're able to re-extend your offer. And I was like, yes, this is where I am. So passed the bar, moved up to Sacramento, because I studied and took the bar down in San Diego, and started working at SAC-TA.
How is it that you became focused on the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office from Tallahassee, Florida?
For some reason, they were doing OCIs at Florida State. And my intern class, so my LRA class, they were from all over. We had people from Notre Dame, we had somebody from Hofstra. So it seemed like Sacramento was just actively recruiting out of state for some reason.
Interesting.
And to me, it seemed like a fun experience. That's really what got it started. I was like, oh, summer in California, never been, let me go. And then it turned out that this is, now my home for about 11 years.
How's your family with you being 3,000 miles away?
They're fine. They're kind of used to me being, the one that was just, I go where I want, when I want, and I'm not gonna say no to an adventure. Right before COVID, they're just used to me being on planes and exploring. Before COVID happened, I think 2019, I traveled about 35 weeks out of the year for various things, either pleasure or just work conferences, business conferences that I attend. And so they're just like, what plane are you on this time? So they were okay with it.
So it's hard to say whether you're being 3,000 miles away is a feature or a bug of the relationship. After you were in Sacramento County District Attorney's Office, you tried some cases there, I take it?
Yeah, so most of my cases, like my jury trials, I did in the Second Judicial Circuit in Leon County, Florida. I did 4 jury trials and a bench trial while I was there. And in Sacramento, mostly what I didn't do any jury trials in SAC that I can recall. I prepped a lot of jury trials, did a number of like 1538.5s and preliminary hearings, and then ran a calendar department, or assisted in running a calendar department, because of course I was still a newbie. And then I did a stint in the Consumer and Environmental Protection Department, working on a big case at the time. It was all about MTBEs, and that was a really interesting focus of like civil and criminal crossover.
At some point, you left the district attorney's office and you went into a civil practice. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Well, we all got laid off. So
Oh,
yeah, it was huge budget cuts. Again, that was 2011. So we all know, it was budget cuts for several years. First, they started with admin, then it became, the legal staff, and it was a last in, first out type selection. And I was still on the misdemeanor team. We were let go. I moved down to San Diego and honestly just took the first job I could get, which was I had never thought I was going to do civil work ever, but that's the job that I got, and I was going to be able to be their trial attorney. And so I said, hey, let's do it. And I did that for about 2.5 years.
what sort of trials did you do?
So they were all creditors' rights bench trials. So I represented essentially a single debt collector. That's one of the largest debt collectors nationally. And I had about a 500 caseload at any given time. A lot of it was being settled, of course, just settlement of debt. And then, of course, going to trial to get judgments. And so I would go to trial usually when there was like an opposing counsel on the other side. Pro pers, we would often send appearance counsel for those. But litigating the highly contentious trials, which was interesting. It kept me fresh and helped me learn a new area of law. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I've done all that I can do here, and this is not where my passion is.
So in following your passion, what did you do?
So, for a while I was actually applying to get back into DA's offices while I was because that's what I knew. I worked in the state attorney's office in Florida. I worked at the DA's office prior to that. And I would get interviews. I even had an offer that was later rescinded. It was just, I wasn't, not even like I wasn't getting hired. I got hired. The budget just wasn't there. And I couldn't rely on like these hiring freezes anymore and hopefully getting out of them. And I decided, well, the only way for me to get back into criminal law is to create my own thing. And I was also having a lot of conversations with a family member who has their own medical practice. She's an OBGYN. And she said, the one thing I regret about opening up my own practice was not doing it 3 years earlier. And I was like, okay, well, right now, I don't feel like this position at the civil firm is for me. I wasn't necessarily impressed with some of the managerial decisions there. And I knew that the only way that I could be the master of my own domain was to create it. So I left and I did that.
And you came to the Bay Area to do that?
Yeah, well, actually, shortly before coming to the Bay Area, I was sent to the Bay Area by the firm to run the satellite office. So I was already kind of running a practice, but doing it electronically. My legal team and staff was down in LA, and I was in Oakland handling the Northern California territory. And so then this is just where I ended up laying roots. And also I met my husband here. So
oh, well.
Then I decided to stick around.
So you decided at some point to open your own firm.
Yeah.
Tell us about the beginnings of that.
At first it was just a thing to one, get me back into criminal law. And I thought to myself, look, I'll just be happy if I'm making the same thing I was making at this civil firm. And it wasn't much, it was just like, I just want to have a salary and see where it goes. And kind of treating my business more like a hobby than a business. And I was doing more like contract work for other people. There was a particular attorney that I was working for who was giving me a lot of their misdemeanor and felony cases to just kind of handle from beginning to end. I was getting a lot of experience. I was working on the CAP panel, just learning the area, learning the players in Alameda County, and just getting experience on how to do cases and to do them the way that I wanted to do them. And then eventually that turned into a systematized plan to grow the business.
How did you develop that system to grow the business?
I wrote it all down, wrote everything down. So, in terms of like establishing my pricing on cases, well, what do I do on a case from beginning to end? And like every single step that I take on a case is written down. How much time does it take to do that? Who's the person in the office who should be doing it? At one point, it was me doing everything. And now there's 13 people on my team. We continue to grow. So I think ultimately it was just taking what was in my head and putting it to paper to establish, fair pricing and to establish plans for the future. So I made a business plan that covers all areas: marketing, sales, measuring, how do I measure my success, my metrics and finances and my factory? Like, where am I setting up, and what kind of staff do I need? What kind of furnishing and supplies do I need? I mean, everything is written down on paper.
Did you develop that skill for writing things down as part of growing up in a military family and being very academically oriented?
No, it was definitely, I invested a lot of time in attending, various business conferences and, getting business coaching, talking to people who had grown their business, because there was a switch, at one point it came, for me, it was like, okay, I want to grow my business. I want this to be more than just something I'm doing because I like criminal law. I want it to be something where I'm like, I like criminal law because I believe there are people to be helped that need help. And the way for me to access more people is to grow the business.
Is all of your business criminal law?
The majority, yes. We do restraining orders and contempt actions. Contempt is quasi-criminal. It's a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but it typically happens in family court. So that's just, and they're all bench trials for the most part. So that's just like a little different area. And then restraining orders just kind of come with the territory because of our domestic violence cases. And we started focusing on those as well.
It strikes me that you really give a lot of thought to what you do, how you do it, and how you practice law. I'm wondering what you really like about practicing law.
So I think at first what I really, well, not I think, it's changed. Things have changed over the years. At first, I loved being in court. I mean, it was all about like, okay, if you don't give me what I want to go to trial and I'm going to try this case. That's just what I was used to doing. And I got like this rush out of it. Now the focus has really been on less about me getting that rush and more about like, what's the best outcome for the people around me. And I think in terms of what I love about practicing law right now is post-conviction. I love anything that has to do with me being able to undo the essentially the mistakes or the judgments that have been passed on people from their past and help them get benefits for the future. So I mean, the mission of our firm is to help people who've been accused of crimes to plan for a brighter future. We take the criminal out of criminal defense. So what my focus is on is about giving people that second chance and really helping them establish a plan for the future. So anything post-conviction, especially things tied to immigration relief. So a lot of our motions to vacate are done so that people can, either establish status or prevent deportation or re-enter the United States. And so we work with a lot of immigration attorneys to vacate past convictions and then hand them back over to the immigration attorney so that they can help them get relief.
Now, one of the things you do is you give back to the community. Since this is an Alameda County Bar Association event, tell us a little bit about your activities with the Alameda County Bar Association.
Sure. I started interacting with the Alameda County Bar Association, I think back in 2013 when I first moved up here. And then I started thinking about going out on my own because my entire network from, childhood friends to college friends, law school friends, everything was back in Florida. And I figured the only way that I can get to know people is to join the Bar Association and become involved. So I started with the barristers section, just, attending the meetings, and then becoming an executive committee member, becoming the chair, and then eventually serving on the board of directors for the organization as a whole. I'm still on the board of directors now. And I also participate in some other activities with the Bar Association, like the Judicial Appointments Evaluation Committee. I'm the past chair of that committee as well. I think it's a kind of prestigious type of committee to be invited to participate in. You have the opportunity to review applications for people who want to become judges. You have the opportunity to interview them. And then after that, if and when they do become a judge, you have this just like insight about, oh, this is the person behind the robe. And I think that's been a great experience for the past. I think I've been doing that for about 6 years now.
Do you have some judicial aspirations of your own?
Not at all. I have been asked that over and over again. I like what I do too much. And I have a hard time hiding what's on my face. And I don't think I'll pass muster when it comes to the judicial temperament part.
You've really taken a real leadership role when it comes to women in the law and women in business. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's empowering, for everybody. I really believe knowledge is power, and it's empowering to empower others. And I think that when I look back to what I had, or what I didn't have access to when I was growing up, and it wasn't that I was raised in like a low socioeconomic area or household. It was just that my parents were very focused on go to school, do good, go to school, do good. But there wasn't anything after that high school. There wasn't anything about like, where should you apply to college? What do? I was, number 19 in a school for advanced studies, where it's the top kids throughout the county, graduating with a 5.2 GPA. I likely could have gotten into, I had a full ride to any state school, and that's why I went to a state school, but I could have gotten into some, not even better schools, but just any school I applied to, but I only applied to one. And I think it was because I definitely didn't have the mentorship that I needed. And it wasn't a failing necessarily on my parents' parts. It's just more so there was a limited focus. And I think when you have the opportunity to talk to people who've experienced more or seen more or are willing to talk to you about the steps that they took or the missteps they took, you have more opportunities for growth. And so now I'm really invested in, I get invited to speak on women in leadership calls. I just did one about 2 weeks ago. I've spoken with the ABA, Women in Criminal Justice Task Force. And I think it's important to invest in those areas where you could have benefited from if you had the opportunity. And I do that not just with women. I've coached mock trial for about 4 years straight with the Youth Law Academy for El Centro Legal de la Raza. And I have had the opportunity, they're sophomores, I've had the opportunity to talk to them about what it's like being a lawyer and just instill in them that idea that you can do whatever you put your mind to. It's just that as a woman, as a young presenting woman of color, I can identify with people who are similarly situated.
If a young person was thinking about law as a career choice, would you recommend it?
I think it depends on what they want to do. I think I personally only believe that being a lawyer is fun if you go to trial. Or if, when you're litigating and you're in court and you've got these substantive motions and it's just like something really good to chew on. I wouldn't want to be a lawyer if all I was going to do was sit behind a desk and draft contracts, but to each their own. So I think it's just making sure that each person knows what their passion is and knows what their temperament is, and whether or not that's something that seems enticing to them. I have a really great friend of mine. She worked for a large, well-respected firm in San Francisco. She was making a lot of money. And she left, this was several years ago when we were at the DA's office. She left there to come and work for free at the DA's office until she could get a job there. And it was, her reasoning was like, I just wasn't enjoying it. I was making money, bought a house, did all of this, but I couldn't be in my house. I was I was grinding my teeth and, having dental problems, and I was so stressed out and losing my hair. And so that wasn't a sustainable lifestyle for her. And I think it's important for people to think about, like, what is it that you value, and is the position you're going after going to help you strike that balance?
How is practicing law met or differed from your expectations about it?
I think I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. And that was because when I walked into it, I didn't really know what I wanted. And criminal law was something that it was like one of the only classes that struck my interest in law school. It was something that I could see myself doing long term. And now, like I said, once I got that taste of being in the courtroom, I don't know if it's just that I have a flair for theatrics or what, but being in the courtroom really just, I found it entertaining somewhat, and there's more. It's more fulfilling than I realized. And I don't do it just for the sake of like, oh, this makes me feel good. But obviously you want to do something that you're driving your passion, and you wake up and you're like, okay, I can continue doing this because I actually enjoy doing it and the people that I'm helping. So all of that, I don't think I had contemplated when I came into this that I would have created a business that allows me to practice in an area that I love and be profitable and help so many people in the community.
Is there anything that you know now that you wished you knew before you started practicing law?
Open your business sooner.
What's the best advice that you've ever received?
Definitely. Well, obviously the one that I mentioned in terms of, starting a business 3 years earlier, because I wholeheartedly agree with that. And, I would say that it really just comes from a lot of reading that I do. I believe that, well, maybe this first part is the advice that has translated to the rest. Leaders are readers. So I think it's really important to be well read, and to, whatever area it is, just to kind of stay on top of things that are happening, to continue to learn and develop in the areas that you have a passion for. So for me, I invest so much time and energy in reading books about business and reading books about marketing and sales and rainmaking and all of this stuff, because it's like, I think it's important to understand it. If I'm going to talk about it, I need to know what I'm talking about it and be able to execute. So I would say that piece of advice has led to so many other things that I've learned. Leaders are readers. And yeah.
Is there any book that you would recommend?
It depends on the topic. I think one of the things that guides a lot of the things that I do is the 4 agreements. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as like it's an easy read, but it's just a strange book. That's all I'm going to say. It's a strange book, but ultimately it's about these agreements that we make with ourselves, and those 4 agreements.
Yeah, I've read it.
Okay, great. So I'm like, I don't even know how to describe this book, but
I agree.
I think it's a really good book to read, because those 4 principles are just something that you can carry through you in every decision-making process. Like, don't take things personal, have integrity in the things you do, try your best, like those are the things that when you're making any type of decision, just guide yourself with that. So that's one of them. And also The Go-Giver. I think The Go-Giver is an excellent book.
Go-Giver.
Go-Giver. Yeah, it's about the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And a lot of it is about how like you give and ultimately receive.
Do you think the legal system's fair?
Oh, do you want me to elaborate?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that maybe some things are well-intentioned, but it's not fair. I think there's a need for a lot of just like the design of the system. I understand levels of accountability and the reason we have laws. I understand, I've been on all sides of the table except for, being a judge. And I understand each person's role. But I do think that sometimes there are situations where people have power that they get to wield and they don't necessarily wield it in proper ways. I've been in pretrial negotiations with DAs who are just, saying really derogatory things about my client and they don't even know them, or making this commentary that is unproductive, or refusing to talk because they're too busy. And it's like, well, this is the point of a pretrial negotiation, sir. So or even just having a naturally bad attitude with you for no reason at all, just because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And I think that that kind of approach to what you're doing kind of lends to unfairness in the decisions and the offers or the things that you're doing in your cases. And so it gets to a point where it's like, if you are so cynical or you're so jaded or you've just, you're so tired of your position or your job, well, you're not doing anybody any service by still being here. We can have good people in DA's offices who want to do good. I know that's why I was in a DA's office. I felt like the DA's office needed people like me in there who was going to, I wanted to make decisions that help propel people in the right direction, not just be like, oh, give them the max. And trust me, I worked with people who were just like, just, bury them under the jail. So
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. What's your family life like and how has practicing law affected that?
Sure. Family life is good. I think that now, because I focused on building the business side of what I'm doing, it has given me the opportunity to do things that I hadn't even imagined, the amount of travel that I do and the time that I can take away from work and spend with my family. I just had a baby in the pandemic. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. March, I think we found out in February that we were pregnant, and pandemic shut down everything in March. And so I was completely 9 months pregnant during this pandemic and delivered. And it was an interesting experience, but I'm actually really grateful for it because I was able to slow down a lot. I don't have to run from this courthouse to that courthouse or travel to Oakland every single day to go to work or, be at this meeting or this event. Everything's virtual. So now I actually get to sit at home and do what I need to do and spend time with the baby. And so that's really been a blessing. And I think my family life in general has been great and has benefited from me focusing on taking my business from a hobby, taking my practice from a hobby to a business.
Let's say you came into some real money, say $3 or $4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
I'd sell my business and I would, I don't know if I would do anything differently, except, it wouldn't be different. It'd just probably be more. Like I travel more, probably on a private jet, so I don't have to worry about anybody else. And I would buy more property. Right now we have 3 houses. I would buy more And I plan on buying a house in Cambridge because my daughter's going to Harvard. And I would, yeah, I'd probably donate more, because I do a lot of charitable contributions, and yeah, sponsor more. I think it would just be a more thing. Take the things that I'm doing and magnify it.
If you had a magic wand that could wave it over the legal system or the world in general, change one thing with that magic wand, what would that be?
I think it would be people's hearts, because I think a lot can be done with softening of people's hearts. And it doesn't mean that you're a soft person or a pushover. I think I'm a very assertive and aggressive litigator when I need to be. But I also think that there is room for understanding people for, who they are, recognizing that everybody makes mistakes, whether you're on in a DA's office or a PD's office or private practice, whatever it is. Everybody's made mistakes. Everybody has felt judgment before, and just really understanding that when you look at people as people, and I don't know if it just sounds like ideological or what, but you just look at people as people and have like a humanitarian perspective, that the world in general would be a better place. So just softened hearts.
I'd like to open this up to have people who are on the call ask a question or make a comment. Jason, I know you have to leave a little early, so let's start with you. Jason, can you unmute? All right. How about Mike? Mike Spencer, you've been here for a while. Have anything you would like to ask Joanna?
Let me just unmute myself there. I just wanted to, because of your experience, and I work in criminal defense as a private investigator, and it's a very complicated question. Who needs to serve time in prison? It just seems like it's such a big, heavy decision. Just what are your thoughts on that? Does everyone need 10 or 15 years, or would 2 years be enough to straighten some people out?
Yeah, I don't think these long sentences are necessary. I can't, the fact, prison is prison. It's here, right? And, if we were talking about a different thing about like whether or not prison should exist and if we should just do away with all of that, I think that's a different answer. But do I think like long sentences are necessary? No. And I when I talk about my post-conviction cases, it's, a lot of them are people who've been sentenced to 34 years in prison or 25 to life. I have somebody who's LWOP, and it's like, what can we do? Is there anything we can do to give this person an opportunity to show that they can reintegrate into society? Yes, the conduct, trust me, most of these cases, the conduct they engaged in is definitely not something that anybody would condone. I think for the most part, they themselves will say, you know what, I was wrong. Because they've gotten to a point, they've been there so long, it's like, yeah, I was definitely wrong. I know I shouldn't have done it. I was young, I was dumb. Most of my clients are, because we're doing youth offender parole or 1170Ds and so on. So people are, of course, they went in there when they were 18 years old, 17, 19, young, right? And I wasn't making good decisions. I wasn't making good decisions at 18, 19, not even at 24. So, to think that somebody's spending the rest of their life in prison is hard for me to agree with. I think that, do I think that prison is appropriate in some cases? Yes. Yeah. And I would say that comes from the perspective of what would I do in a situation if somebody raped my daughter? The alternative would be I'd probably want to murder someone. Or, and I know this is going to be posted, but whatever. That's what goes through my mind. And I feel like people a lot of people think that, most people don't act on that. So it's either send them to prison or they get hurt. And in the alternative, if somebody acted on that, right, could I understand where somebody in the heat of a moment finding out something like that acts on that behavior? I can totally understand that. And so it's not that I'm condoning it, it's just more so of like, there are appropriate alternatives, and an alternative to somebody being punished in a different way for an egregious act is probably sending them to prison.